Life has a way of throwing us into storms. Those moments when the ground feels shaky beneath us and everything we thought we could count on seems to be slipping away. It's easy to become overwhelmed in the midst of those trials, to wonder if things will ever get better, to question why things are happening the way they are. The pain, the uncertainty, the confusion, they can feel like they're too much to bear. But here's the truth. No matter how fierce the storm, it is only temporary. The storm will pass. And when it does, God's faithfulness will remain. We need to understand that storms are a part of life. They're inevitable. Whether it's a personal loss, a financial struggle, a health issue, or any other trial, we will all face storms. There's no avoiding them, but what we must hold on to in those moments is that God's faithfulness does not change. It doesn't waver with the circumstances. It doesn't depend on how we feel or what's happening around us. God's promises remain steadfast, even in the middle of the fiercest winds. When everything around us is in chaos, God's faithfulness stands firm like an anchor, holding us steady. The good news is that the storm you're facing is not permanent. As hard as it might seem right now, every storm has an end. There is an expiration date to your trials. The rain will stop, the winds will die down, and you will step out of this season stronger than before. The enemy wants you to think that the storm is forever, but God is telling you this too shall pass. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, even when it feels like the darkness will never lift. What we sometimes fail to realize in the middle of the storm is that God is using the very thing we're going through to make us stronger. Adversity is not something to be feared because it's the very thing that builds our resilience. It's in the struggle that our faith is deepened. It's through the pressure that our character is refined. We come out of the storm not only unscathed, but more equipped to handle whatever comes next. It's through the storm that we discover a strength we didn't know we had, a strength that can only come from God. And let's not forget that we're never alone in the storm. Even when it feels like we're walking through the fire by ourselves, God is right there with us, walking alongside us. He hasn't left you. He hasn't turned his back on you. His presence is constant even when we don't feel it. When the storm is raging, God is the peace in the midst of the chaos. He is the light in the darkest moments. He is the comfort in the pain, and he is the strength when we feel weak. You don't have to navigate this storm on your own. God is with you every step of the way. So no matter how intense the storm is right now, know this, it will pass. The storm is not your final destination. There is a better day ahead. God's faithfulness will carry you through it, and when the storm clears, you will be standing on the other side, stronger, wiser, and more confident in God's unwavering love. Keep holding on to the truth that he is with you. Trust in his faithfulness, because the storm will pass, but God's faithfulness endures forever. And that is a promise you can hold on to. Life has a way of catching us off guard. Just when we think we've found our footing, the storm comes and everything feels like it's slipping through our fingers. Sometimes it's the little things that start to pile up. Small disappointments, unexpected challenges that gradually build into something overwhelming. Other times, it's the big life-altering events that hit us out of nowhere. A sudden loss, an illness, a major setback, or a broken relationship. It's in those moments that we can feel like everything is falling apart, and it's easy to wonder if there's any way out. The thing is, the storm we face is real, and it's not something we can ignore or deny. It's important to acknowledge the reality of the storm. We don't need to pretend it's not there or try to rush past it. But acknowledging the storm isn't the same as surrendering to defeat. It's simply accepting that life is full of challenges, some of which we can't control. There is strength in acknowledging that we are in the middle of a storm because it allows us to make the decision to face it head on rather than being paralyzed by it. The storms we face are not always a result of our mistakes or shortcomings. They are part of the broken world we live in. Sometimes things happen that are beyond our understanding, and in those moments, it's crucial not to get caught up in questioning why it's happening to us. Instead, we can focus on what we can control, how we respond. When we acknowledge the storm, we also acknowledge that we are not helpless. Life doesn't always give us the option to avoid hardship, but we do have the choice of how we will approach it. Recognizing that the storm is here is the first step toward finding peace in the midst of it. Instead of avoiding the hard feelings or pretending they don't exist, we can take a moment to say, yes, this is difficult. Yes, this hurts. But I'm going to face it. And I know I don't have to face it alone. Acknowledging the storm allows us to be honest with ourselves and with God, opening the door for His comfort, His strength, and His peace to enter our hearts. It also helps us understand that while the storm might feel all-encompassing, it doesn't last forever. Acknowledging the storm means that we don't have to live in denial, but it also means we don't have to believe that the storm is the final word. We're not stuck in it. Life moves in seasons, and no matter how intense the storm is right now, it will eventually pass. What we need to remember is that even in the storm, God is present. And in our recognition of the storm's reality, we open the door for God to step in and give us the strength we need to endure it. In the midst of any storm, when everything feels like it's falling apart, one of the most comforting truths we can hold on to is that God's faithfulness never changes. It's easy to think that when we're going through tough times, God has somehow turned His back on us, that maybe our struggles are a sign that He isn't with us. But that's simply not the case. God's faithfulness isn't contingent on our circumstances. It is constant, unwavering, and unshakable. Even when everything around us seems to be in turmoil, God's promises remain true. His word is faithful, and He will always keep His promises to us no matter what storm we're walking through. When we find ourselves in the middle of a storm, it can sometimes feel like God is distant, like we've been abandoned. It's easy to look around and wonder where He is, especially when we're facing pain, confusion, or uncertainty. But the truth is, God hasn't left us. In fact, He is closest to us in those moments, walking through the storm with us, holding us up when we feel we can't stand on our own. His faithfulness doesn't mean that we won't experience pain or hardship, but it does mean that He will never leave us or forsake us. His presence is a constant, and His promises will hold firm even when the winds of life are howling around us. God's faithfulness is not based on how we feel in the moment, nor is it based on how strong or capable we are. It is rooted in His character. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The God who was faithful in the past will continue to be faithful in the present and in the future. When we're going through a storm, it's easy to get caught up in what we can see and feel in the natural world, but God's faithfulness transcends our circumstances. We can trust that no matter how strong the storm, God is still in control. He is still good. He still has a plan, and He will carry us through. His faithfulness also means that He is always working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it. In times of difficulty, we often want immediate answers or a quick resolution to our pain. But God's timing is perfect, and He is always working things out for our good. Even when the storm seems endless, God's faithfulness assures us that He is working in ways we can't fully comprehend. What may seem like a long season of hardship could be preparing us for something greater. Our trust in His faithfulness allows us to rest, knowing that He is faithful to lead us through the storm, and He will bring us out stronger on the other side. So when you're in the middle of the storm and everything feels uncertain, remember this: God's faithfulness is your anchor. His promises are unbreakable, and He is with you every step of the way. The storm might be fierce, but God's faithfulness is even fiercer, and it will hold you steady until you see the calm on the other side. There are times in life when the storm feels like it's never going to end, and the weight of our struggles can feel unbearable. The darkness seems unrelenting, and the path forward appears unclear. But here's a vital truth to hold on to. Storms are temporary. No matter how intense or prolonged they may seem, they are not permanent. The trials we face today will not last forever, and even in the hardest moments, the storm will eventually pass. We have to remember that just like the seasons change, so do the storms of life. The rain doesn't fall forever, the winds don't blow without end, and the thunder doesn't keep roaring without ceasing. There will come a day when the storm will subside and the sun will break through the clouds again. It's important not to lose sight of this in the midst of the struggle, because in the moment, it can feel like the pain will never end. But time moves forward, and so does the storm. Every storm has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when you're in the middle, it's easy to forget that the storm will eventually reach its end. While it might not feel like it now, each moment of difficulty is a moment closer to the storm passing. It's easy to focus on the pain, the uncertainty, and the confusion, but the truth is that what we're facing is a temporary season in our lives. The challenges that seem overwhelming today are not the final word. God doesn't promise us a life without storms, but He promises that He will be with us through every one of them, and He will bring us out of them. Even if the storm is fierce and the road ahead seems long, we can hold on to the assurance that this is just a chapter, not the whole story. The beauty of knowing that the storm will pass is that it gives us hope. When we recognize that the difficulty we're facing is not forever, it helps us to endure. We're able to stand a little taller, take another step, and keep moving forward, even when it feels impossible. The storm will eventually move on, and when it does, we will find ourselves standing on the other side, looking back and realizing that, though it was difficult, we made it through. And in that moment, we'll see how much stronger we've become, how much deeper our faith has grown, and how much more we trust in God's faithfulness. In the meantime, we don't have to face the storm alone. We have the assurance that God is walking with us through it. Even in the darkest moments, we can trust that He is there working in us and for us. And as we press on through the storm, we can have peace knowing that no matter how long it lasts, the storm will eventually pass. And when it does, we will emerge stronger, more resilient, and more aware of God's faithfulness than ever before. The storm will pass. And when it does, we will stand firm, ready to embrace the new season that God has waiting for us. When we face storms in life, it's easy to think of them as setbacks, as something that will set us back or break us. But the truth is, God often uses these very storms to build us up, to strengthen our faith, and to shape us into the people He's called us to be. The challenges we face, though difficult, are not simply obstacles to endure. They are opportunities to grow. It is through the fire of trials that our character is refined and our faith is deepened. During the storm, it's hard to see the purpose in the struggle. We want the pain to stop, the difficulty to end. But God doesn't waste any season of our lives. He doesn't allow us to go through hardship just for the sake of suffering. In every storm, there is something He is doing beneath the surface. He is building resilience in us. We are being strengthened in ways that would not be possible without these challenges. Just like muscles become stronger through resistance, our faith becomes more solid and enduring when it is tested. We may not like the process, but it is in the struggle that God equips us for the next phase of our journey. It's also important to remember that growth doesn't always happen in easy, comfortable moments. Often we learn the most in times of hardship. When life is smooth, we may be content to stay where we are, but when the storm comes, it forces us to look deeper, to lean into God more fully, and to grow in ways we didn't know we needed. The storm doesn't just teach us how to endure, it teaches us how to rely on God like never before. It forces us to put our trust in Him and not in our own strength. And in doing so, we come out of the storm stronger, more confident in God's ability to see us through anything. In addition to building our own character, the storms we go through often prepare us to help others. It's easy to feel isolated in the midst of a trial, but one of the most beautiful things about adversity is that it teaches us empathy. When we've walked through a storm ourselves, we are better equipped to walk with others through theirs. The lessons we learn in the fire allow us to offer comfort, wisdom, and encouragement to those who are going through their own struggle. Our pain becomes a testimony of God's faithfulness, and our growth becomes a source of hope for others. So while we may not understand why we're facing the storm, we can trust that God is using it to shape us, to refine us, and to make us stronger. The difficulties we endure are not without purpose. They are part of a bigger plan, a process of transformation that prepares us for what's ahead. As we come through the storm, we will find that we are not the same person we were when we went into it. We will be more resilient, more faithful, and more prepared for the next chapter of our lives. And through it all, we will see that God's hand has been at work, refining us and making us into who we were always meant to be. As we face the storms of life, it's crucial to hold on to the truth that although the winds may howl and the rain may pour, the storm will not last forever. These storms, though painful and overwhelming, are temporary. And while they may test us, they will not break us. God's faithfulness remains unwavering through every season, no matter how fierce the storm may seem. He is with us every step of the way, strengthening us, refining us, and carrying us through. The challenges we face are not without purpose. In the midst of the storm, God is doing something in us, something that will make us stronger, more resilient, and more deeply rooted in our faith. We may not understand the process in the moment, but we can trust that in the end, we will emerge stronger, equipped for whatever lies ahead. And when the storm finally passes, we will look back and see how God's hand was with us all along, guiding us through and building us into the people we are meant to be. So as we endure the storms that come our way, let us remember that they are not the end of our story.